This brand has generated over $1.4 million in sales on Shopify in just 2 months. Over 38% of that came from email marketing, which means that we made them over $537K in extra revenue in just 2 months. In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how we did it and how we can do the same for your e-commerce brand. So let's get right into the video. First off, as always, proof of the results. As you can see, the breakdown of total revenue as well as the email revenue. It was only email, so we had SMS and some other provider. From Clave it was only email. Now, majority of that came from flows, and that's mainly because this brand was sending a lot of traffic already, and a lot of people are repurchasing the product after the purchase for the first time, which means that a lot of revenue is coming from post-purchase emails, and I'm gonna cover that later on in the video as well. Now, I wanna divide this case study into 4 sections. First one, I'm gonna talk about the background of the brand. Secondly, I'm gonna talk about list growth, how we managed to grow the list. Then I'm gonna talk about flows, which are automated email sequences. And then the last one is campaigns. So without further ado, the background of the brand. The niche was automotive, then the email revenue was 0, so they haven't been sending any emails whatsoever at all. As you can see, that's why the percentage growth is so high, because they didn't have Klaviyo before, right? In March we sent 1 email to warm up the domain, so that's why the growth is so huge. But total growth for the brand is pretty high as well, 10% during 2 months, which for this size it's pretty decent growth. Then the email list, which was 11K. Far majority of that was people who were just already existing customers. There were some email addresses from people who left checkouts and so on, they were saved, but majority of that were repeat customers, and also that's why flows have made so much revenue, because if you set up flows, you can back populate them with all data, and that's how we managed to do it. But once again, I'm gonna cover it later on. As for AOV, it was pretty high, almost $400. So I would say pretty high AOV, but for automotive niche, this is something you're gonna see. There are a lot of stores doing way higher AOV than this one, but still, it's pretty high. So this is really everything you need to know, pretty much. Now, if you are in a different niche than automotive, this strategy would work well for you as well. So just watch the video, because it works for any e-commerce brand essentially, regardless of the vertical or niche. Same goes for the email list. If you don't have an email list, I'm going to show you how to grow it. If you want to grow it most effectively through pop-ups, I've got some other video which goes more in depth on how to create high converting pop-ups. It's going to show up on the screen, so if you're interested in that, you can have a look and watch it. Now, for the list growth, they had some subscribers once again, but majority of them were existing customers. So we needed to start collecting data from non-buyers, because without non-buyers, there's technically, majority of the flows won't be firing as well. For example, we don't send site abandonment flow to existing customers, just mainly because they know what the product is about. We don't need to educate them that much about bestsellers and so on. Now, the most effective way just to grow our list is having email pop-ups. This is single-handedly the best hands down method to grow our email list. And we set up 2 different pop-ups with the same offer, but they are different based on the placement. So for desktop, we have 1 pop-up, and then the second one is for mobile. The main difference between them is usually it can be a design, because on desktop you have just more space to play with designs and show more stuff. But the main trigger or change is gonna be the trigger. For desktop is exit intent only, meaning that if someone is browsing for your website and they're about to quit, and when I mean quit, we're tracking their mouse cursor. So if they move the mouse outside of any tab towards closing the tab or towards closing the window, it's gonna show them the pop-up, which is great because we're saving a lot of margins and showing it to people who are about to leave, not interrupting the whole process. For mobile, we usually start off with these settings, so either 10 seconds active on page or 60% scroll. Usually we just also move forward with A/B testing different triggers. Sometimes longer trigger will help you get more qualified leads and better quality, not affecting your margins that much. So always remember to test this trigger, because once again, it can have huge impact on your margins and total revenue. On top of that, we're collecting zero-party data. If you ever see this ZPD phrase, it's usually called zero-party data. It's a very fancy name for that, but people love it. And mainly it was because the store was in automotive niche, but they had 2 different customer avatars. So first one was B2C, like regular client, who's doing it for himself, essentially buying the product for himself. But there are also B2B clients who are running another business, and the products they were buying, they were using them in their business. There's going to be a huge difference in approach, because as you can tell, if you're trying to sell, for example, supplements to regular customer, like singular customer who doesn't run a business, you will be like, hey, like showcasing the benefits for this specific person. So for example, if it would be like a weight loss supplement or skin supplement, you're gonna show before and after, obviously not using Facebook ads because you might get banned, but overall you'll be leading highly with benefits, how their problem is gonna be solved by using the product. But on the other hand, if you have a B2B client, let's say you're selling like in bulk supplements and they are reselling them at higher price, selling benefits to them won't help that much, and approach is going to be a little bit different, because for them, they want to have high repurchase rate, they want to have low return rate, they want to have high retention. So if someone buys, they want them to keep coming over and over again. High LTV. They also want, for example, maybe to have customizable labels so they can put on their logo. So as you can see, the approach is like hugely different based on the customer avatar, and that's why we've done it for this brand as well, because then it helped us with the welcome flow quite a lot. And it was the main difference. So we're mainly using zero-party data for the welcome flow, and obviously then also in campaigns, but welcome flow was the most important part. And essentially, if you're wondering what zero-party data is, it's like asking a question about someone's desire or like trait outside of them giving you data about their email address, phone number, or name. You could be collecting names as well, but it wasn't that important for us in this case. Usually how we structure this pop-up is we set up it leading with the question. So, hey, you have unlocked 5% off. To receive it, just let us know if you're a B2B or B2C customer. And obviously we didn't do it like literally, like tell us if you're a B2B or B2C, because those B2C customers would be confused. But we've done like, hey, let us know if you're running a business or if it's gonna be a DIY project. And then people are responding, and based on their response, we're assigning them property in Klaviyo, and then triggering the welcome flow based on this trigger, and then also segmenting them for campaigns. If it's just a little bit confusing, let me know in the comments, I can help with that, but overall it's very helpful just to collect this data, especially if, once again, you have multiple customer avatars, or if your product solves like multiple problems, like it's fairly common in cosmetics niche or supplements as well. So it's pretty cool to collect this data, because then you can just customize the content a little bit more. Now going into flows, nothing extraordinary here. As I said, we're mainly sticking to basics, and I mean basics, to fundamentals, but are executing them in a very good way. So we have very good copy and designs that we have nailed down. Like, once again, this format has worked for all of our other clients, like in total for over 30 commerce brands, so we already know it's proven to work. As for the welcome flow, once again, we had 2 versions, 6 different emails each. So in total, we made 12 emails for the welcome flow alone. But once again, these were 2 separate flows based on the customer avatar. Then for abandoned cart and checkout, both of them had 4 emails. Same goes for browse abandonment. For site abandonment, 1 email only, that's fairly enough. For post-purchase, 5 emails, but then we increased it to 7, and I'm gonna cover that a little bit later on. For replenishment, we made 3 emails, customer win-back 3 emails, and then purchase anniversary 2 emails, and sunset engaged 1 email. For sunset engaged, never go above 1 email, like 1 is fairly enough. And here's also a screenshot of open rates, click rates, and then placed order rates. Click rates are a little bit inflated, as you can see right there on this green line. They started going up. It was mainly because of Hotmail and Outlook bug, where Klaviyo was tracking like every single email as being opened and clicked by Hotmail and Outlook domains, which obviously is not true. But in general, we're pretty happy with the metrics. Obviously right here we saw a dip, but whenever you launch sunset and engaged flow, or in general, if you backpopulate any of the flows to inactive subscribers, you're gonna see a dip in open rates, but towards the end of this period, they already went up to, I believe, like around 52 or something like that, so it's very healthy. Now for the post-purchase flow, we initially started with 5, but for this brand, their top performing flow was post-purchase flow or customer thank you flow. And that's why we added 2 other ones, because we sent a bunch of campaigns and we took 2 performing ones that made sense to send them to existing customers, and we added them to existing post-purchase flow, making it longer and ultimately generating more revenue, because if something works, we just double down on that and add more emails, because once again, it brought us some great results. But aside from that, as you can see for the flows, quite heavily on the repurchase side. So in total, it was quite a long journey because post-purchase flow was ending around 25 days after the purchase. Replenishment was starting around like 35. Customer went back 90 days, and this one 1 year after the purchase. So throughout the entire year, we've got multiple flows that once again we back populated and retargeted the existing customer list, which was pretty decent. That's why flows have generated so much revenue, and that's why the post-purchase one was high performer, because there were a lot of possibilities for cross-selling products as well. And with this pretty high AOV, the results were pretty decent, as you can probably see. 70% of total email revenue came from flows. Of course, other flows have generated some revenue here and there as well, but majority of that came from existing customer list, and the margins because of that were also super high for these purchases for this brand. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about campaigns, what was our strategy, and so on. So first, most important thing was that we had a brand new sending domain, and that means we couldn't email the entire list right away because we would just mess up our domain's reputation and potentially risk landing in spam, which obviously is not something you want to do. And that's also an email list that have never received an email before, which means that it's very hard to get to their primary inbox, right? Because they've never opened from us. So the email engagement for this domain, like this specific domain, is pretty low. But the plan was, as usual, to be honest, with new sending domain, warming up the list, and then expanding the segments and increasing the frequency. We didn't have any email activity, since once again, they have never received an email from this brand, from Klaviyo. So we used store engagement. What I mean by store engagement is that these were people who have purchased from this brand in the last 15 days, for example, or started checkout in the last 15 days, or viewed product in the last 15 days. I believe at the start we were limited to purchases because Klaviyo wasn't connected as well, but then we also had data about checkouts and so on, because you can also like backpopulate it to Klaviyo. And then we kept expanding segments. So initially we started with store engaged last 15 days, then we moved on to store engaged 30 days, and then after a little bit we switched to email engaged segments because we wanted to make sure that our open rates are remaining very high. That's mainly to establish very good relationship and domain our reputation with the inbox service providers. We want to show them that our emails are very high in engagement, because then they're gonna start placing our emails into the primary tab rather than spam, which once again is something that we want to see. Now, the main thing is to keep an eye on the open rates, and whenever they would be dropping, you need to tighten up the segments. But in general, the open rates for this brand were pretty good, right? As you can see, the first campaign we sent, it was already above 40%, right? It was around 45, probably maybe even towards 50%, which is very good. Then we obviously had some ups and downs, but in general, it was looking very good. This spike was once again caused by Hotmail and Outlook inflated metrics. But aside from that, right now we're averaging 50% open rate. And as you can see, we have also targeted a lot of these customers, over 85K during these 2 months. So once again, the plan was accomplished because we started off slowly, small segments, campaigns. Some of them were plain text, but majority design based. And then we just kept on expanding. All the other metrics were also looking very good, even before inflated click rates were obviously right here, it's almost 20%, which is quite insane. But during the first month, we still had click rates around 3 to 4%, which means that the list was very engaged, and the placed order rate was also pretty decent. Now, all of the top performing campaigns were sent in May, and that's mainly because we started targeting more people, we started expanding segments, and that's also where we started testing a little different messaging. Once again, ignore click rate because they're inflated. But what I mean by different messaging is that obviously for non-buyers, we're going to show different content. For buyers, we're mainly cross-selling the products, and for non-buyers, we're pushing the star product or bestseller so that we make them convert. But we were also playing with the zero-party data thing, which I told you about before, where we're targeting people based on the customer profile. So people who are buying for themselves or B2C clients had different messaging than B2B clients, and that's why we also had separate campaigns for these. And that's also why the revenue was so high for May from campaigns, because we just started expanding and hitting the right people with the right message. Top performer was 21K almost in sales, but all the other ones have done very good job as well. Once again, for these emails, ignore click rate, but as you can see before, we also had great click rates like this one, 2.57, This one 6.34%. So these metrics are looking very good, even before inflated click rates. The actual ones were probably, once again, between like 3 to 4%, which is pretty good. Now the fun fact is that the top campaign was plain text campaign, so this one, and it was a pretty long educational email, and it has worked great. And I'm saying it for a reason, because a lot of brands never send these emails. Like, all they do is send design-based emails, which is obviously great because you want to establish like brand image and authority and so on. But these plain text emails connect very well, especially if you sell a product where customers need a little bit more education about and awareness. Then these campaigns tend to do very well. And once again, click rates are inflated, but sales are not, since it wasn't a subscription-based product. These people had to actually manually place an order, so that we know for a fact that these numbers are not inflated, at least for revenue. Now the plan to keep getting these results is to keep testing more angles, adding emails to segments, and double down on what already works. So once again, we've already done this with the post-purchase flow, but if we see, some other emails that are working well, we're gonna either add them to one of these flows, not necessarily to post-purchase because the time frame for this flow may be a little bit too long, but we might add them to one of these, or we may A/B test it against some of the current emails in the post-purchase flow. And yeah, this is what happens for brands that, like this one, where they decided to take their email marketing seriously in Q2, which is like, far ahead from Q4. And for a fact, right now it's July, and we already know that Q4 for this brand is gonna be insane, because they just took the step to taking these things seriously, even though they haven't done it before. They've heard a lot of myths about email, and they weren't sure if it's gonna work for them. But then we stepped in and showed them what's possible, and now they're pretty amazed by the growth they've seen, especially with this period being a little bit slower and them spending a little bit less on ads, and still seeing 10% growth. For, once again, like if you average 700k per month and see 10% growth, that's like an extra 70k per revenue every single month, which is pretty decent. And one more thing that they saw was that their list was very high spending. As you can see, revenue per recipient was almost $5, which is also very high. And now, if you want to get results like these and be like this brand, where they know already right now that Q4 and possibly the entire next year is gonna be insane for them, because they know how to profitably utilize email, you can book a call with me using the link in the description down below, where we're just gonna have a chat. I'm gonna show you what's possible and how we can help you. But if you're not there yet, if you don't want to start working with us right away, you can watch my other video where I show you how we made this e-commerce brand over $1 million in just 5 months. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Cheers!